Hello, in this video we will first open up images in Adobe Bridge to then open them in something that's called Camera Raw, which is a free program that comes along with Adobe Photoshop when you buy it. We'll edit things in Camera Raw and then kind of get them ready to bring them into Photoshop, as well as along the way discussing differences between Camera Raw and Photoshop. What I'll first do is press my Windows button, and not open Adobe Illustrator. I want to type in Bridge, same color, and then you'll open Adobe Bridge here. And what this does is it's similar to opening up a file menu from, let's just shut this down. Similar to opening up a file menu from Windows, such as something like this, where you can kind of guide yourself through folders and different drives to get to your saved information. So I'm going to do the same thing as I would there. I'm going to do it in Bridge. And I'll go to my K drive, where all of our class information is stored. I'll go to Art, Design and Digital Art. You go to your student folder where you've saved hopefully many different pictures that you will use for your portrait series, where you're kind of showing the evolution of a theme. And since I don't have an adorable child of my own, Ms. Niebuhr has kindly let me use these 3 pictures of her unbelievably cute son named Jerry. So we'll get to look at him throughout this process, and it's a story of him throughout the seasons playing outside of their house. So kind of evolution on a theme, the theme being seasons and children's play. So I'll click here, hold down Shift to highlight all of them, and when I right click in Bridge, there is an option to open, and if I just click open, it will open in Adobe Photoshop. I don't want to do that. I want to open this in something called Camera Raw. While this is opening, Camera Raw is a free kind of add-on that comes with Adobe Photoshop when you buy it, and a lot of photographers really like using Camera Raw because it just kind of pars away all of the additional, sometimes overwhelming stuff that Photoshop has to offer that doesn't exactly have to do with photo manipulation. This just focuses on the basics of photo editing and rendering. And also, you practice non-destructive editing when you are in Camera Raw. So it's called parametric, I believe, editing. And what that does is instead of changing the pixels themselves when you go to edit something, like this for instance, what we're telling the computer to do here is, instead of changing the actual, what makes up the picture, the pixels, we are kind of adding a code or an algorithm and tying that to the picture. So I can bring this back down to 0 and then nothing has changed. So it's a really nice non-destructive way to edit a photograph. Another really cool thing about this is that you can group photographs. So we grouped them by opening them up, and however many you have up here is fine. I have these 3. I'll say select all, and then I'll hit synchronize. And then this dialog menu comes up. You can synchronize everything, and I will say OK. And this just means as long as I don't click off of one of these, and if I do, for instance, let's say I wanted to see this lovely picture of Jerry, I would have to redo this. So I say select all and then synchronize everything and then say OK. So I'll kind of edit from this photo for right now, but what that does is any manipulation that I put onto this picture will then be copied exactly onto these other pictures. And if you're doing a series of 3, one of the things you'll be graded on is visual unity, so this may be a nice way for you to make the exact same edits to each one of these so that they can all kind of look like they belong to part of the same set. If you don't want to do that, there are other ways to make your photographs look unified. It's just one way to kind of explore the idea of unity. First, white balance. I'll just kind of run through this. We can look at what auto looks like. And with each change you make, just kind of think, does this make my picture look better than it did before? And if the answer is no, put it back. It's easy to kind of overdo photo editing. I know, at least for me, it's easy to get carried away. So just kind of just stop and think, like, is this actually making it look better? With highlights and shadows, exposure. I won't go again into these in a lot of detail because it's the same kind of words that you would see in a less extensive program. Programs that come with cameras, for instance, a lot of times have things like this. Vibrance bumps up the colors, kind of making them more cartoonish, making them more vivid. You can bump down the vibrance if you want to go for kind of an older, antiquier feeling. It seems to be kind of in. So the saturation does the same thing. If you bump down the saturation all the way, if you completely desaturate the picture, it will turn to black and white. Overall temperature here, warm or cool. If I bring this toggle to the blue side, the picture, it kind of gets a cooler tint to it. And then subsequently, if I move it to the yellow side, it becomes warmer. The tint. These are curves, so parametric curve, like parametric editing, what I was talking about. You can bring the highlights if you want to, darken the photograph. Any picture that you're editing, it really depends on what the light was like, what the camera exposure was like when you took it, but you want to strive for a full range of values. So when you look at a photograph, does it have darks? Does it have a variety of midtones? And then does it have highlights? So I kind of want to work to bring some highlights back in here. Point curve lets you do this yourself. You can click and drag, make and drag points to above or below this line here. If you want to move these kind of more gently, you can let go of your mouse, and while one of these points is selected, use your arrow keys so you can really focus on what's happening to the photograph. Kind of a rule of thumb, at least with me, is to make a really shallow S-curve, kind of like that. But again, it totally depends on what the exposure and the light source is like in your photograph. We have detail. This is kind of sharpening. Will make your picture a little bit less fuzzy. I don't think we really need to do any of that. Detail brings it up to luminance. Kind of makes things look almost kind of paint dauby or really, really fuzzy. What it does sometimes is it masks skin imperfection. Jerry doesn't have any of that though, so he looks great just how he is. We don't need to do that. Let's see here. I think I missed something. Clarity is something that you'll see in photographs that are edited in Camera Raw. And again, sorry, this is right over on this first tab. And the more you bump this up, kind of the more almost kind of chromatic effect this has. Again, it's easy to overdo things and get carried away, while this, in my opinion, looks kind of fake. Bumping it up just a little bit gives it a slightly edited feeling. That may make you want to go back and kind of reevaluate some of your curves, some of your exposure. Maybe I want to bring the highlights up just a little bit, the lights up. A lot of times one decision informs another. Let it happen and always kind of reevaluate if needed. The HSL and grayscale allows you to either bring out certain colors. So if we want just the greens to look really intense, you can do that. Let's put that back at 0. Or it allows you to kind of select and only select one color or a few colors. So for example, if I only wanted the greens to show, I'd bump all of these down but the green. Keep in mind, if you are synchronizing all of your pictures, what effect this has on each photograph. For example, there's not that much green here and here because it wasn't spring yet. So maybe that wouldn't be a good idea. Or maybe I would unsync them and then make changes individually to each one from here on out. Completely up to you. Right now I'm not going to do anything with that. Split toning, this allows you to manipulate your highlights separate from your shadows. So do that. Balance, more darks, more lights. Effects, there's a lot of effects in Photoshop that we'll talk about for our next demonstration. You can make it kind of grainy or old looking, and I'll show you how to kind of link different papers and different textured surfaces to your photograph. So for right now, I'm not going to do anything about that. Post-crop vignetting, I can bump up the amount just a little bit here, and as you can see, there's this kind of circle that happens, or a fading that happens rather, on the edge of the photograph. And I'm bumping this up towards the white side here, so it's kind of fading into white. I can bump this down and have it kind of fade into black, or kind of have a darker fade around the edges so that the inside kind of looks like it glows. What this does is it brings attention to our lovely little subject right here, and so it brings the viewer's eye to where the photographer intended it to be. And again, this is another kind of trendy thing that's in right now, so if you want to try it, it is seen a lot in advertising and senior photos, wedding photos, etc. So that's about all I'm going to show you on Camera Raw. You can play around if this is something that you are really interested in doing and something that you've done before. Feel free to bring your own knowledge to it. But once I've got every one of these the way I want them, and be sure that if you're synchronizing these, you double check and make sure that the changes that you've made to one make the others look as good as the first one did. For example, if I were to look at this photograph, I think this is a little bit too bright. The brightness is up too high, and it kind of overexposes this photograph because it was taken on a different day from a different light source. So maybe this would be the time for me to desynchronize all of them by clicking and then adjusting this photo just a little bit more. And because it is non-destructive, I didn't do anything to hurt my pixels, so that's cool. Once I am done, and we're nearing the end of the video time here, once I'm finished, I can select all and then click Open Images. And when I click Open Images, it will bring them all up in Photoshop. I've been asked recently, well, why would you use Camera Raw? When do you use Camera Raw? When do you use Photoshop? You know, what are each one of them for? And I kind of like to think about Camera Raw in terms of like being in a darkroom. If you've taken any darkroom photography classes before, you go in there and you really, you know, through putting your photograph in different baths and chemicals and different wait times and stuff, you try to get the most perfect picture that you can in a developmental stage. And then once you're done with that, you can bring it into Photoshop to do things that you would in traditional photography, like hand coloring or acrylic overpainting or some of those kind of more creative abstracted methods, whereas Camera Raw is more more able to be compared to the initial developmental process. So I'll say Open Images. Photoshop will start automatically. And then this is where I will begin my next